Welcome to Life, Laughter, Divorce, episode 37. I am your host, Leanne Linsky.
And I'm the boyfriend.
And we're having a rough time. We are getting a little tired here.
It's okay. We're going to make it through it.
Oh, you guys, we need to have a whole blooper episode. So welcome back to another wonderful week of divorce, you guys. While you're out there tuning in on iTunes and Stitcher, be sure to rate, review, and subscribe. Unless, of course, you're driving. Don't do that. That would be dangerous.
But if you're a passenger, you can. And check us out on our Instagram page, our Twitter page, our Facebook page.
Yep.
Leave a comment.
All of those. Yep. Or just check us out at lifelaughterdivorce.com and shop around in the new retail therapy shop online.
Ooh.
Yeah. Holidays are around the corners. Right? Put that on your wish list.
Yeah, I was trying to think about getting my sister something, but there's like the spousing cleanses, and I don't think I want to get that for her because I don't want her to get, that's kind of weird. But for those who do want to despouse themselves, there's some really cool soaps that are just amazing. They're made here in Long Beach.
Yeah.
And yeah, you should check them out and give them a try.
They're actually really good quality soaps. So check that out. We also have candles on there in case you want to put yourself in the spotlight.
Boo.
Yeah. What? You didn't like that?
No.
Oh my gosh. We love our candles. We love our soaps. We hope you love them too. So go on, check it out. Shop around. Also, while you're on the site, you probably want to know that we have a webinar coming up, a live and interactive Divorce Prov webinar.
That's one of your classes, isn't it?
Yes, it is. It's coming up October 22nd. And, now that the holidays are quickly approaching, that might be something that you want to entertain, that idea, because this will definitely help you get through the holidays with a sense of humor. And also, this episode is really cool, and I'm very excited about it because we had so much to talk about with our guests. There was just so much good information here from her that we decided to break this down into 2 episodes. This is part 1. Next week we'll have part 2. But you want to listen to the whole thing through. Obviously, I mean, once you start, you're going to be probably taking notes, unless of course you're driving, because that would be dangerous. Don't do that. But listen for the coupon code, because our guest makes a really good offer for Life, Laughter, Divorce listeners. So you want to jump on that because this is really good stuff. So yeah, what do you think of that, boyfriend?
I think what she is providing people will really help them get through their divorce, especially if you're in that middle of that divorce process.
Yeah, or beginning or even thinking about it, which I think most people are thinking about divorce.
I typically am not thinking about divorce.
Right. Well, yeah, we're not even thinking about marriage, but there's so much good stuff in this episode. So, yeah, it's pretty amazing. And things are so different because my divorce was way back in the day before the internet. Pre-internet days. So, I mean, I couldn't even Google stuff. I think I actually had a referral by a friend of a friend at work or something for an attorney and ended up looking him up in the phone book and, going that route. But, looking at the statistics and stuff nowadays, the boyfriend and I did a little bit of research here. And it actually looks like the most expensive state, do you know what it is? Well, yeah, you did this research with me, is California to get a divorce.
So why is it the most expensive?
Well, first of all, the filing fee just to file the divorce is $435. But the average attorney hourly rate is $402. That's a lot of money.
That can add up really quickly.
Yeah, you even take 10 minutes of that hour.
How many times did you talk to your attorney?
I think like twice. I went in originally to meet with him about hiring him, and he said, here's how you can save money. And this was so long ago, and I think he was just starting out at the time. And he was like, here's what you do. And ours was uncontested. So I really got lucky both times. And
so go back to this. If you're contested and you talk to your lawyer more than a couple of times, $402 an hour on average is going to add up.
Yeah. And it says that on average, contested divorce can cost anywhere between $10,000 and $30,000.
Depending on states and things.
And California is the most expensive, then New Jersey, then Connecticut, Florida, and Pennsylvania. But among the cheapest states to get a divorce, Wyoming is the cheapest. Wyoming.
Okay.
That's probably because there are like not that many people that live there. It's a very large state, but it only costs $70 to file in the state of Wyoming, and the average attorney fee is $187 an hour.
That's cheaper than it takes me or for me to take you out to dinner.
Exactly. That's when I'm not that hungry.
Uh-huh.
And Wyoming, North Dakota, South Dakota, Maine, and Mississippi are among the 5 cheapest states in which you can get a divorce.
Wow, and what's the attorney fees for Wyoming?
Wyoming is on average $187 an hour.
Oh, that's a big difference from $402 on average here in California.
Yeah, it's less than half.
So how to navigate the lawyers and the lawyer fees and all of the paperwork, that could get daunting, right?
It can get very daunting. And the thing is like, you really don't know what you don't know. So you can, unless you have a good friend or somebody who can really walk you through it. And even then, a good friend isn't going to have the same experience and same issues come up or the same financial situation that you do. So I found this so interesting talking to our guest today because there's so much good information. And, I can't even imagine navigating a divorce nowadays. There are so many ins and outs, and especially living in California. So there's really good stuff.
So, Leanne, tell us about our guest this week.
So glad you asked, the boyfriend. Claire McCarthy is our guest this week, and Claire is the founder and CEO of Modern Split. Claire is a certified divorce coach and former family law paralegal, spending nearly 20 years in and around the judicial system. Modern Split provides tips, tools, and resources for folks going through a divorce that don't require a law degree to understand. Modern Split was founded on a simple premise: see a need, fill a need. Big Weld Robots 2005. And without further ado, Claire, welcome to Life, Laughter, Divorce podcast.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here today.
Nice. Well, I'm really excited to have you here because I have so many questions for you after following you for so long on social media now, and you've revamped your website, and I want to know about your journey. So I guess the easiest place is kind of start at the beginning about
Okay.
I know you haven't quite the background.
Does it all start?
That's right.
Yeah. So divorced, been divorced now almost 10 years. I was married for almost 10, divorced almost 10 now. And a lot of people want to know, usually will ask me, does your company come from your personal experience in divorce? Which is a really great question, because so many times that's, we build things, we create things, we do things based on our personal experience and sharing. And in my case, no, my Modern Split did not come from my personal divorce. However, I had been in the family law world for almost 20 years. I had worked in law firms, again, 20 years, litigation, family law. So it's intertwined in with the story of my personal divorce, but it wasn't really a catalyst for what we do now. It really came from a need of seeing women that didn't understand the legal process and the verbiage and the players and just how it all works, and giving them that information.
Okay. So when you started Modern Split, that part of your business was started after your divorce, though, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So Modern Split in some way, shape, or form has been around for about 5 years. And I left the legal world and I went into I left the law firm world. I'm still in the legal world, but left law firms, and still was helping colleagues and coworkers and friends kind of navigate their divorce and understand the process of divorce, and thought, I don't really want to go back to a law firm. I don't want to go to law school. I have no intention of that, but I still love explaining to people the business end of a divorce, right? So, I remember I had one coworker who came to me and he was livid at his divorce attorney. And I said, okay, well, tell me what's going on. Like, maybe you have a bad divorce attorney. Maybe there's a miscommunication. Like, what's going on? He shared a story with me and it was completely normal. I mean, it was how a family law attorney and a firm would react. The billing was correct. The processing was correct. But there was a disconnect between what the attorney was telling him and what he had heard from friends and family and television and what he thought the process was going to look like. And so kind of through all of these conversations, and I thought, okay, maybe it's, should I go into divorce coaching? Should I facilitate support groups? Like what, and so it kind of has been through those 5 years, kind of a journey of starting in one place, all still around divorce, all still around resources and tips and tricks and trying to explain to people like what the business end of a divorce looks like, to what we have today, which is modern split and everything's online. You can get our courses, you can get all of our links, you can get all of the information, and it's all in a digital format. So that's kind of the journey with lots of things left out. Lots of twists and turns that we haven't really, touched on. But that's kind of the gist of it. So always been in the legal world, always been in the divorce world. How we present it to the audience has changed a little.
Right. Well, did you find that being in the legal world for so long, I'm guessing that probably made your own divorce much easier, right?
I did. I mean, it was, the circumstances for our divorce were very simple. I filed the divorce paperwork myself. We signed off on it. It was very, very simple, very easy. Got all that done. We high-fived each other in the court when it was over. We didn't have issues until about a year or 2 years later when we did, when he requested a modification to child support and visitation. That's where things got a little crazy for us. And that's when I did reach out to one of the family law attorneys that I knew and had worked with and knew personally, and he stepped in. And I think that that's a good example of knowing when you're too close. While the first time I could handle it, it was very simple, very straightforward, paperwork, sign, done kind of thing. Second time, tried to handle it myself. Did handle it myself. And I should note, 2 of my best friends are also family law paralegals. Between the 3 of us, we have like 100 years of experience. So it wasn't like I was going in blind. Oops, sorry about that. But I knew that this one was this was serious. This was something I couldn't handle on my own. So I reached out to my attorney, had a great attorney. So I did. I knew what to expect. I knew how to handle it. I knew what realistically and reasonably could be done, and how to be a good client. I think that is something that women forget. You are a consumer in this divorce. You need to be active. You can't just walk into, your lawyer's office and just sort of give it all to them. You have to participate in it. And that's something that women they hate to hear that because they're like, no, I'm hiring an attorney so that I don't have to. But you do. You have to read your billing. You have to do your homework when they assign it to you. You have to kind of answer those tough questions that people. So yeah, and here's the thing that I tell people too. So, it's like, oh, you knew what to expect. Yeah, I knew what to expect. I knew how to handle it. I had been in court before. I knew all the players. I knew how billing worked. But at the end of the day, I was still scared shitless. Absolutely scared shitless because it was about my child.
Right.
And it was a unpleasant situation to be in with my ex-husband. Right.
Yeah.
So we had gotten to an ugly place where we had not been before. Right. So divorce was very amicable, high fives, very easy, just it is what it is kind of thing. Then we get to this place of ugly. And that is very that takes up a lot of real estate in your head.
Yeah,
right? And
it sure does.
Yeah. So even though I knew probably more than anyone, I knew what to expect. I knew how to handle it. It was scary going into court for yourself versus going in as being part of a team that's representing someone else. Totally night and day. So here's where I thought, oh my God, like if I'm so scared and I know everything, what about these women who have never been in a situation like this? They've never had to hire an attorney. They don't know if they should have an attorney or a mediator. They don't know if they should do it themselves. They don't understand the paperwork. The money involved is ridiculous, right? So you see dollar signs. Like if I'm freaking out, of course, other women are freaking out and they have zero resources.
Yeah.
Right? And then you go out onto this, lovely thing called the interweb, and there's like billions of pieces of information that like 99.9% of them are awful. They're just awful. It's bad information, right? And then you have your friends and family who are kind of putting their 2 cents in. So I was like, okay, we need to get some accurate, easy to understand, not all the legalese, not all the, you need a law degree to understand the terminology. We're going to make it to the level of you're a woman going through divorce. You now understand what you're facing. And that was it. We stripped it down and really just made it super understandable. Because like you said, I was scared out of my mind.
Yeah. So I would imagine.
Yeah,
I would imagine this changed the way you do business considerably.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, even though the modern split came sort of after the fact, this wasn't during this time, it really has shaped how we put the information out there, how we make the information available. So, if you've taken an online course or you have done any kind of digital download, most courses, they do like this. 1 week you get a lesson here, and then the second week you get a second lesson, and depending on the information and what you're learning, that's really necessary because you need to like sort of have that week to process it and maybe do some homework and learn and research and things like that. Whereas what we do is we give you everything immediately.
Okay.
Right? So I know, and again, this goes back to you need everything right now. Like you can't wait 6 weeks to understand, like, should you mediate or litigate? You just need it all right now. So we don't drip anything out. We provide everything to you immediately. And that was something that I was like, okay, that's just how it has to be. And then we've got advisors like, well, that's not how everybody else does it in the online learning. And I'm like, yeah, I don't care. This is how we do it.
Right.
Because it's important that women have immediate access, because I don't know where they're at in their journey, right? I don't know if they're just contemplating a divorce or they've just sort of been advised of one that's on the horizon, or they're stuck somewhere, or they're getting, bills from their attorney that they don't understand how to read. They don't even know what they signed off on.
Yeah.
So we provide everything
right away, which makes a lot of sense. Yeah. So your academy, looking at your academy and what you offer, it sounds like everything's pre-recorded and everything's ready to go for someone, right? Yep. So can you walk me through maybe what the academy offers, each module that they get?
Yeah, so we have 5 modules. The first one is kind of like Divorce 101, right? It's like your pre-leaving tips and your checklist, making sure that you do you have access to cash? Are you in a safe place? Do you have all of your documentation, right? Do you have a copy of do you either have your passport, your social security card, your kids, kind of like the stuff that you're going to need. Because oftentimes women will just leave, or they're sort of bullied out. And then they're like, I don't have my kid's social security card and my ex won't give it to me. Right. So we want to make sure that you either have it physical or you have a copy of it, your bank accounts and, if you have a business together, so that you have that information. It's at least a starting point, especially if your attorney needs to subpoena documents. They need to know what accounts you have. So we kind of have this checklist of, where to start. Right. Yeah. That's your first thing you need to worry about.
And if I
talk about
and before you go on, one of the things that I just thought of as you were talking about that is I recall in my second but I don't remember my first or second divorce. My attorney was the same. I used the same attorney, right? They all blend together after. But but one of the things that he had said to me is before you approach your spouse on getting a divorce, get your paperwork together, because the minute you give them a heads up you're leaving, game over. Yeah,
absolutely. And so what I've told women is like, we're so tempted to like tip our hand, right? Or use it as leverage, right? So you're in an argument and you're like, well, you know what? Screw you. I've already been talking to an attorney and this is what's going to go down. You're going to pay me X and your life is going to be miserable. As much as that's going to feel good to say in the moment of that argument, you have literally just screwed yourself. Like and I don't advocate for being shady. I tell people, you take the cash you need out of an account to live and to live decently with your children. It's not a time to raid accounts. Don't be a dick. Like, don't, because not only is it an awful thing to do, the judge is going to look at you and be like, well, you need to pay it back.
Yeah.
Like they don't look kindly on things like that. So I always say, be cool, but be smart about it.
Yes.
Like, you need to have access to cash. You need to have somewhere to live. Are you safe? Right? What are your core needs as a human? You know, so don't tip your hand, please. I mean, get your shit together before you sort of decide if you're in a position where you're making the call. Now, oftentimes women find out, oh, hey, I'm getting a divorce or one is coming down the pike and here it comes. The minute you know that, same rules apply.
Yep.
Right? Get your documents, make copies. Do you have heirlooms? Do you have mementos that you don't want lost in the shuffle? Do you have pictures that you want to make sure you retain? Now, keep in mind, if you take those pictures, you will need to make copies for your ex, right? If it's your children or something. So again, I'm not saying take the pictures and never give them, right? But it's having that like, okay, I've got everything that I need. At least I know they're not going to be burned. They're not going to be thrown away. They're not going to, whatever. It doesn't matter. So that's really like, so the first module in the course is all about like how, like, if this is happening, like now what? Because there's like this fear and this, sort of, we become paralyzed, right? Mm-hmm. And especially if you get married and I don't know, when I got married, I never in a million years thought I would get a divorce. It never even crossed my mind.
We never usually step into a wedding thinking this is going to end soon. Like,
right. You know, you're like pretty confident, like you've intertwined and you're like, okay, this is happening and things are good. So you don't really have this like exit plan. And I'm not advocating that you have one, although I do believe that women should always have access to cash that is on their own.
Yes.
That is one thing. Even if your ex knows about it or your current knows about it, you alone have access to that money.
And
Every woman should have.
And the same goes for any relationship you're in, whether you're married or not. You should have access to an exit plan because you never know.
Yes. Never know. You never know. And I think that, you know, divorce brings the ugly out in people.
Oh, gosh.
You know, there were a couple things that, you know, like I said, my ex and I, very amicable split. Again, things that I thought, ooh, never expected that. That's interesting. You know, it just, because it comes to, they're hearing, you're hearing, they're hearing, whoever, friends and family in their ear, coworkers in their ear, maybe they're angry, they're processing. And so, you know, I've worked with women in the past who've like, oh, we don't need a parenting plan because we're going to be totally cool with each other. And it's going to be so, and I'm like, are you literally on crack? Like on what planet? That's nice today. But 6 months from now, when he has a new girlfriend or you start making a ton of money or whatever, because money and people changes everything.
So
right?
True.
And so I'd be like, you have to have a plan. You can always deviate from the plan, right? You can always be like, hey, this weekend doesn't work for me. Do you want this weekend? Hey, can I have that weekend? Like whatever. You can always change it. You can always modify it. But you better have something in place to begin with. Because the nicest, most amicable divorces inevitably somehow, some way go sideways, even if it's for a short period of time, right? Maybe it's a 3-month stint ugly. And then you get back to like, okay, we're cool. We're both parents. We can do the best for our kids, you know, kind of thing. But do you want to just wait for that to happen? No.
Yeah.
You want to make sure that you have this all written out. So that's kind of like the first module is kind of like the nuts and bolts of it. We talk about, you know, head versus heart processing, you know, your heart. So I was, you know, you find out your husband is having an affair, right? So you've decided you're getting a divorce. In your heart, you're like, oh, but he's the father of my children. He's my high school sweetheart. I love him. We have all these memories. You know, can we make this work? That's kind of like the heart processing. The head processing is like, what do I do now? How do I meet with the attorney? Where's the cash? So it's like you have this conflict between the two. Right. And so it's important to manage that, especially during the divorce process, because you really need to be in the head portion, not the heart portion.
Right.
You know, you got to kind of be like very logical and non-emotional. We talk about friends and family, how to handle them, which is like a whole ball game. Social media. Yeah, I could go on and on with friends and family. And then kind of like social media tips. You know, this wasn't something I had to deal with when I went through my divorce.
Yeah,
Facebook was kind of new and there was all this like stuff going on. And, you know, the stuff
the
that
internet
I see
didn't even exist when I went through mine. So
I tell people like, you know, it's like,
we were fighting over custody for our pet dinosaur. I don't know. No.
Exactly. You know, it's like, I tell people like when my ex-husband and I got together, we used pagers to communicate. Like, so like that, and I'm not that old. Like I'm old, but I'm not that old. So it's like the world is so changed, and you know, social media is just this thing that is like, when it comes to a relationship, I see people who completely shut down, which I highly recommend. You just don't even put anything out.
Yeah.
And then I've got the people who are like, they want to share the dirty laundry and they want to get people to pick sides, and they just are trying to process it through, you know, social media. And I'm like, good God, please stop. Like, really, you've got to stop. Not only that, but let me give you a tip to your listeners who may not be aware of this.
Yeah.
Everything you say, everything you type, everything you send via text or email, it can be used against you in litigation. It can be blown up poster size and brought into court. And people don't realize that. They're like, oh, those are my private thoughts. So
you didn't make them, keep them private.
You didn't make them private.
Yeah.
You put it out on Facebook.
Yeah.
And the other, you know, so that's something that people are like, oh, and I'm like, do you want your text where you're calling your ex, you know, a no good, dirty bastard, you know, blown up? And he might be. He even probably is. I don't know.
Yeah.
But do you want that put up in a poster size for your kids to see in during trial?
Yeah.
No. I mean, so like stuff like that people don't realize. So that's kind of like our first module. Second module is we talk about, you know, do you want to litigate? Do you want to mediate? Or do you want to do it yourself? This is something that women don't even realize they have an option.
Right.
Right. They assume by television, by friends, by family, by whatever, you get an attorney and you file paperwork and you hash it out in court and you get ugly and you play dirty and it's under the belt and, you know, all those kind of things. It doesn't have to be that way. Mediation is I can't say it enough. Mediation, if you are able to mediate, do it. It will save you tons of money, but it only works if you have two parties that can sit in the same room together. And that's not always the case, right? So if there's any abuse or bullying or anything like that, then obviously it's not going to work. But if you have two people who are like, look, this marriage just didn't work. We've got kids, we've got assets, we've got property that needs to be divided. We can sit in a room and hash it out with an attorney who is completely impartial for about $5,000 usually, which is a lot of money. But the average divorce to litigate is $20,000 and upwards.
Whoa.
And people realize, that's not like a Kanye Kim divorce. Like that's just like Joe Schmo divorce, right?
Yeah.
And I tell people that and they're like, dear God, I have to pay that much to get rid of this person? I'm like, yeah. And that's like just like average.
Yeah. Some people might just opt to buy a new car and be done with it.
Thank you.
Just drive away.
I mean, I'm like, why don't you just, because really in a divorce, the only two things that you really have any control over, or that really are involved in a divorce, like, so there's your friends and family, and there's, there's so much that goes on, you're losing your partner, there's a lot of loss and stuff. But when it comes down to the legal portion of it, it's really about money. And if you have children, the children.
Yep.
Right. Those are really just the only two things you can fight about. Right.
Yeah.
So are you going to fight about money, or are you just going to call it and save your money?
Yeah.
It's and the things that people will fight about are so, it makes my head hurt. Like, fighting over dish towels, or, and then you get to the point where you're like, this is just fighting for the sake of fighting. And,
right.
And oftentimes women particularly don't want to be taken advantage of. They don't want to be weak. So they fight. And I'm like, do you want to be right, or do you want to be happy? Because this is like a never ending battle. You could keep this going. A divorce can go on indefinitely.
Right.
The process of a divorce. Like, you could just keep fighting forever. Or you can just finish it up in 3 to 6 months and move on.
Right.
And so, like, we oftentimes women don't want to be perceived as weak, or all of those things. Are like, we got to be tough, we got to fight, we got to stand up for ourselves. Well, yeah, but at the sake of what? Being reasonable does not mean that you're weak, or that you've given up. You've just gotten smart about how you want to handle, like, your life.
Yes.
And so that's so in excuse me, in module 2, it's all about that litigating, mediating, or do it yourself, which, even if you do it yourself, I always recommend that you at least have an attorney review it to make sure that you haven't missed anything. I had a friend of mine once who, her and her husband had a very short marriage, no children, really no assets, nothing. They did a quickie do-it-yourself divorce, and 6 or 7 years later, she was engaged to be married, getting a house, like, very happy times, and found out that her ex had not paid off the credit cards that he was responsible for. And never came back to haunt her over those years until she went to get a house with her new fiance. Mm. And it was one of those things that she was like, well, look, I thought we handled it and we signed off on it. And I was like, yeah, that's, you guys did everything you should, but always have an attorney just, like, do that stamp of approval for whatever, because you don't know what you don't know.
Yep.
Right. I mean, you can't foresee every scenario down the road. So do it yourself. Totally a perfectly fine way to go. If you, like, have a background in law, or have someone who can review it, and then still have an attorney review it and sign off on it. Module 2, we also talk about hiring the right legal counsel for you. And that's something that people don't understand either, is, there's in everything. There's bulldog attorneys, there's soft and fuzzy attorneys, there's young, there's older, there's, the whole gamut of, like, attorney. Like, what's the right attorney for you? Is it male or female? Right? Mm-hmm. Something that you should consider. I always laugh. I mean, I was a huge Sex and the City fan, and, if you're a fan too, that scene where Charlotte's getting divorced and the hot attorney's in and she can't concentrate, and she's like, oh my God, I have to talk about my divorce in front of this hot attorney, and then they give her Harry, and she's like, game on, I can do this now, right? So I mean, that's something to consider. Do you feel comfortable? Do you want a woman? Do you feel more comfortable with a woman on your side? Do you want a man because you want a man? It has to be what works for you. So how to find the right attorney or mediator for you. Something that people don't realize is, are they close to you? Because you're going to have to go down to their office a few times. You're going to have to go into court a few times. If you live an hour away from them, do you want to travel an hour each time? Things that people just don't think about. You don't necessarily need a family law specialist, which is usually much more expensive. They have additional training and education, but you do want someone who does family law as the bulk of their representation, right?
Right.
You need someone who understands that. So that's module 2. In module 3, we talk about, kind of an overview of the process of dissolving a divorce, what it looks like, who the key players are, because so you talk about like partners and associates, and what's the difference between a partner, what's the difference between an associate and a law firm, and how do they bill differently, because that's really what it comes down to. What is their hourly rate, and people will look at their invoice and they'll be like, well, my attorney bills at $275, but Joe Schmo here, he put 3 hours in on my case and he bills at $475.
Wow.
Well, what the hell? Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, that's to be expected. That's a senior partner who's reviewing your case. And that's something that you need to know right away. When you're sitting in that office and you're reviewing your retainer agreement, you need to understand how that works, because that is the number one cause of bar complaints is billing. And I really feel that it's just, I love attorneys. I'm not like bashing on attorneys. There are some bad apples that kind of ruin everything, but that's just how their business works. And if you want to be smart and save money, you need to understand how that business works.
Right.
So that's really something that I am very passionate about, because it's so important that you understand what you're signing, what you're potentially getting yourself into financially, how you could potentially get screwed, right? You have to be an advocate for yourself,
right?
And how billable time works. Attorney billable time is different than regular person time. That's just how it works.
Yeah.
They bill in certain increments. So if I can teach women how that works, they can be smarter about how their case progresses, and they can be smarter about how they're spending their money.
Right.
So that is really, really important to me. Legal definitions, key players, law firm hierarchy, like I talked about, associate versus partner versus, paralegals that bill out at a different rate. Module 4, we talk about a lot about that maximizing billable time, how to batch your questions, who you should contact for what, because hear me when I say this, anyone out there in podcast land, every phone call, every email, every exchange of correspondence, you are being billed for.
Yeah.
So what that means is you're like, oh, but I just called my attorney and I had like one quick question and it took literally like 4 minutes. Okay, that's great. You're getting billed for 0.15 because that's the lowest billable usually, right?
Right.
So it's like, don't just call them for one quick question, put it all in an email.
Yep.
Send it out. Or could you have asked the paralegal that question? Oftentimes, yes. I'm not going to lie. Your paralegals and your legal assistants should really be your best friend, because I'm not going to say that they're just as qualified, but as I have been one, and we kind of are. There's a lot we can answer. Obviously, we don't give any legal advice. I still don't get any legal advice in modern split. I can't by law, but I can tell you things that you're like, oh yeah, that makes sense. So think about, like, do you need to talk to your attorney, or is this something that a legal assistant or paralegal can answer quickly for you? And thinking through, like, who do you contact for what? How to be organized, how to stay on top of all the documentation, and then we kind of go through this, like, tips to understanding your attorney. And this is a really fun thing that we do, because there's so much misinformation about, like, attorneys in general and family law attorneys. And, they're friends. Like, if your attorney is friends with opposing counsel, and people, it blows their mind. I'm like, yeah, they work in the same field. They're probably in the same networking groups. Their kids might go to the same private school together. They're in the same, bar associations. I mean, but that's not a bad thing.
Right.
So you want two attorneys that can reasonably negotiate together because it saves you money.
Yeah.
So I remember I heard a story, friend of a friend kind of thing, where it was like, she was so mad because when they went into court, her attorney went up and talked with the other attorney, very personably, very friendly. You know, it wasn't like, shooting daggers out of his eyes at the opposing counsel. And she was pissed. She felt like they were in cahoots together. Her ex had gotten to him. Like, it was all this conspiracy theory of like, and I was like, okay, first of all, too much television. That's not how this works. Secondly, I was like, yeah, of course, right? It's like, how many Law and Order episodes have you watched, really? I mean, This is not, how it works. I was like, dude, that's awesome. That means that your attorney and his attorney can reasonably communicate. They don't have to shoot emails back and forth. They're not arguing for the sake of arguing. They're just trying to get you through this process and get you on with your life. And at first she was like, wow, never even thought about that. I was like, yeah, why would you? I mean, you think that this is how this should be. So we give these like tips and like how to understand your attorney and hopefully give the advice that you might, if you've never been in that situation, you're just not going to know those things about how they communicate and, the fact that they all probably live in the same neighborhood and their kids go to school together and things like that. Module 5 is all about the kids and how to talk to your kids about divorce, how to walk them through it, how to keep them as sane as possible through the whole experience, and how to share custody. This is like a biggie that I told people, like, marriage fades, but divorce is forever if you have kids. Mm-hmm. You are never, they're always there. Like, you have to figure out a way to coexist, because even if, like, I have an 11-year-old. Now I've been divorced almost 10 years. So you can imagine, do the math on that. Yeah. Single parent for the most part of his life. And I've had people, well, you just have to deal with it until he's 18. I'm like, no, no, exactly. Because, when he's 18, he's going to go to college. Well, then we have to figure out together who's paying for college, where is he going to college, how are we going to support him through college, and then there's marriage, and then there's his kids. And I mean, forever, for better or worse, you are intertwined in some way, shape, or form with this person that you were married to if you have children. Yeah. And if they take an active part in their life, which isn't always the case. I mean, you do have a situation where mom drops out of kid's life or dad drops out of kid's life, and and that's it. But this idea that, now granted, you just have to get through. I feel like 18 is like the hard part, because that's like the fighting over, money or time. By the time they're like 16, 17, they're doing their own thing anyways. And you really can't force them to go to dad if they don't want to see dad, and dad can't force them to go to mom if they don't want to see mom. And so it does change as the years progress, but you're always going to be in each other's lives to some degree. Weddings, funerals, family events, sports events, college. I mean, never ending. If there's a medical issue, you're going to constantly have to. So you have to figure out a way to co-parent without killing each other, which is really hard. I don't even pretend to have all the answers on that one. I'm still figuring it out sometimes. But we've taken sort of like the best of, what we got feedback from customers and clients. We've talked to family law attorneys, family law paralegals, and kind of compiled all of Modern Split. While it is my company and I teach this, it's a compilation of probably like 200 years of experience. Not only my experience, but, we reached out to mediators, family law attorneys, paralegals, our previous customers and clients, support group. We did surveys, like, what do you need to know? And we're going to put it together for you. So sharing custody is it's a beast. It's a never ending process. So I told people I haven't gotten it all figured out yet. I've been doing it like 10 years. I will say this. The trick is to love your kids more than you hate your ex. That to me is, if you have to bend over or bite your tongue, you just have to do it. Yeah. And that is so hard, especially if you're a little fiery or, I can't tell you the dozens of times I have wanted to unleash unholy like warfare onto someone. And you're just like, okay, that's in the best interest of my child. I will agree to that. Right. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And you're just like, you call a girlfriend and you cry over margaritas, or you punch a pillow or something, but you really, this is not about you. This is not about you and your ex and what happened 5 years ago, 10 years ago, or infidelity or abuse or whatever. It's about your kids and what's best for them. And I'll obviously, if you suspect any kind of abuse or anything like that, then yes, you become, a terrorist for your kids. But for the most part, that's not usually the case. It's just a difference of opinion on parenting. It's usually what I find. Yes, there are cases of abuse, physical, mental, sexual abuse. You fight that hard. You take your kids to Canada or Mexico. You didn't hear that from me, but you do that.
Yeah.
And you fight and fight and fight and fight for the safety of your children. But what I find is it's usually like, oh, my ex fed them, cookies for dinner. Okay. Like, they'll live. Things like that. Or like, oh, he doesn't make them go to bed on time. Okay. I mean, you can't control his house. You control your house. You control what you can do. These are not things that the judge wants to hear about. This is not worth going back to court for. These are, nuances and differences of parenting. Yeah. You can give your 2 cents. Little Timmy really needs to get to bed on time because he's a terror at school if he doesn't. But that's really not something that you can control. And it's it can be very difficult. I've been there. I understand it. But so module 5 is all about the kids. So that's kind of that's the academy in not a nutshell. That's the expanded version of it all.
And that's just an overview, and it's packed full of information.
Yeah, I mean, we really, I went above and beyond, to be honest. I really wanted it to be like so much information, take it in as you can so that you feel really confident about your decisions and you feel really like you understand what's going on because the general layperson does not. Why would you? I mean, you've never been in this, you're expected to understand this system that you've never been in. That doesn't even make sense half the time. Of course, there's going to be questions. So yeah, that's the overview, and there's a lot more to it. We have checklists and we have a notebook, and I teach the class via video, and it's all in your dashboard. You can download it. You can watch all of it in an afternoon, or you can kind of piece it out depending on where you're at in your journey. You can always refer back to it, because law is kind of like when you go into the doctor to get bad news, like you always need someone to go with you because you're only hearing like every third word.
Yes. Yeah.
Like, kind of like when you go into your attorney's office, you're like, I'm glazed over. I don't quite understand. Like,
well, and you're also running high on emotion, and it's hard to separate the head from the heart. And if depending on how your day is going, you might not be all there and able to hear.
Well, you're not sleeping. You're stressed out. And even so, I tell people there's this like misnomer, I guess, about, well, I wanted the divorce, so I should be okay. And you're still dealing with the same losses. You're still dealing with the same emotion. You're still dealing, even if you wanted it, you're still going to process like a loss of the friendship, a loss of companionship, a loss of financial, whatever those
are. Even if it's grieving over the loss of a dream of what it was supposed to be to you.
Sure. So absolutely. That is so real. So real. What you thought it was going to be and what it ended up being, and, there's so much that goes on into it. So yeah, I mean, if you're sitting, I had one of the last clients I ever took when I did one-on-one work. She wanted the divorce. She fought for the divorce. And she came to me because she was like so distraught that she was dealing with all these emotions. She just like wanted it to be over and she just wanted to move on. And she was like 3 weeks out of filing. Right. Mm-hmm. And so I talked to her and I'm like, you would be a sociopath if you weren't feeling all these things.
You just read my mind because you'd have to be not to have any emotion.
Like, she's like, I don't want to think about this. I want to be over this. I don't want to be emotional. Why is this bothering me? And I'm like, dude, if it didn't bother you, you'd be a robot. Like, why you had an, if I recall, I mean, this is going back years and years, she'd been married for a decent amount of time and had children together. Like, this wasn't just like, I was married for 6 months, bad, oops, that wasn't meant to be, whatever the case. Like, this was an involved. And I just remember saying to her, like, if you weren't feeling all these things, then I would be concerned about you.
Yeah.
But these are all very normal and natural processing of grief. And grief is really grief is really where it's at in divorce. I mean, people don't understand that you need to process it. I'm certified in grief recovery, which is one of my many lifetimes prior. And it all really feeds into divorce as well. Like, you have to process it. You have to lean into it. You can't just sort of shove it under the bed. It'll come back. It'll come back in new relationships.
Yes.
It'll come back in you haven't dealt with. So yeah, I mean, there's so much, like you said, I mean, it's an emotion. You're not sleeping, you're emotional, you're flipped out about money. Like, if you haven't worked, maybe you took time off to be a mom, and then all of a sudden you have to like find a job and you have no skills, or you haven't been in the workforce for 10 years.
Yeah.
Scary shit. I mean, real life stuff that of course you're going to be freaked out. So Modern Split Academy is just hopefully just take the slice that you're dealing with right now and give you the tools and resources and tips and information to at least give you some confidence that you're on the right path. You're not getting bullied by an ex. You're not getting taken advantage of by your attorney. You're learning how to keep friends and family sort of at arm's length, and you're just kind of processing through this. So, it's been a real, I mean, I love the academy. It's super fun to teach because I get to sort of like go off on all these like tangents and stuff, but it's really, it makes me happy to be able to give women these resources so that they go, you know what, this is kind of a shitty situation, but we made it a little less shitty.
Yeah.
Through having,
that's
and
what,
so that's kind of,
yeah, that's what I love about, what you're doing is it's very straightforward. And even just visiting your website, like everything it's very clear. It's very clear that you're candid. You're going to have an open and honest conversation. What you get is what you see. Like, you're laying the facts out. You're not sugarcoating things. And I think that's really helpful in a time like this, because that's the thinking with your head part. It has to be very clear.
Well, thank you.
Cool.
Thank
yeah.
you. Oh,
well, what I'll do too is I'm going to have all your client contact information in our show notes, which is on our website, and then also on iTunes and Stitcher. So it'll appear in the notes there. So that'll be great. And then I think you had a special offer.
I do. So anyone who's listening, I know we're recording this earlier, but it will go live, I think you said, on October 17th.
Yep.
Am I right?
You are correct.
So we're going to do a promotion for your listeners because we like to give stuff away for free. But in this instance, we're going to do a discount code. So Modern Split Academy, the entire thing right now, the intro price is $297. So if you think about that, like, it's less than 1 hour with an attorney, and you're going to get like a crap ton of information. So we wanted to keep it really accessible to everyone. That's why we have it priced at that. But for you guys, we're going to give you guys a discount code. It's LLD50. So if you go to checkout, LLD50, we'll give you $50 off. And that will run through the 17th through the 23rd, midnight Arizona time, the 23rd. So anyone who's listening, it's an additional opportunity for you to save some money. And I'm a big fan of saving money.
Love it. That's a great discount. So, and you're right, that's less than an hour's worth of attorney time. So you guys should jump on that. That's fantastic. Yeah. Thank you for that offer.
You are welcome. That is something like, just one more. I know I can go on and on forever.
That's all right. That's good.
We really wanted the Academy to be something that everyone could have access to. Yes, $300 is a lot of money. I understand that. Again, it's less than probably 1 hour with an attorney. Absolutely less than 1 hour with most attorneys, which are starting at $350, $450. But one thing that happened when I was working one-on-one and doing support groups is financial situations were holding women back from getting information, right? So they're going through divorce. They desperately need someone to walk alongside them. They need information. And they're in a time when money is very, it's very at the fore. Like that's a big concern for them. So when we did this, I was like, okay, what is a number that we feel we're giving value, like insane value, right? But I wanted it to be something that was that like everyday person could get. Like you could put it on your credit card, or you could put it on PayPal, or you could, whatever the situation, like you didn't feel like it was like this ginormous investment while you're already facing these huge bills and financial concerns. So we spent a lot, and this is our intro pricing. We're kind of we've done some repricing. It won't go much. It'll go higher, but it won't go a whole lot higher. We really do want this to be accessible to like literally every woman who needs this information, that feels like they can get it without it being a huge financial burden to them. Yeah. Because, working with a one-on-one coach or a therapist, which we love therapists, we highly recommend that every person has a therapist.
Right.
But this information, like you can't afford, most women can't afford a divorce coach to walk with them one-on-one throughout, a 12-week or 6-month program or whatever it looks like for them. It's just financially preventative. Like they just can't do it. Whereas $297, like I wholeheartedly feel like it is an amazing investment so that you have this information, because we really feel like you're going to save hundreds, if not thousands on that. And this is not a plug for us or buy our stuff or anything like that. But that's something that, like, if you're looking for other resources, whether it's divorce or anything, like look at the pricing and what that means. Like, yeah, that's something that's really important to us, that we want this accessible to everybody.
Oh, I think it's a great deal. And I think, yeah. And even if people are listening and you've already been through a divorce, if you know someone who's just thinking about it or stepping into this, the holidays are coming up. This could be a really good gift to help somebody get an education on their process.
Hey, thanks for listening to part 1. We'll return next week with Claire McCarthy. More from Modern Split.